right. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Dozier. I wish I could see everyone face to face and interact, but that just doesn't work with a large group. But I do want you to submit questions by the chat box. I will not be reading those as I'm presenting, but my wife, Pam, is in the other room on a computer where she can jot down the comments, come in, give me the link or the lead or the questions, and I even just say it and get us started. So tonight we're talking about how to reduce your misophonia severity using progressive muscle relaxation. Now, I've been working on misophonia for 10 years now. I am a behaviorist, a master's level behaviorist. My primary career is behavioral parent coaching. And if you hear me mute, I'm getting over a cold that actually started before just as I did last week's session. But a behavioral parenting coach. And I was introduced to misophonia by a mom who had this 11, 12-year-old who had this incurable hearing disorder called misophonia. Going to ruin her life. It was a hearing disorder, but the girl had auditory, visual, and olfactory triggers. Well, that can't be a defect in the hearing neurology. That's a respondent behavior of some kind. So I thought, hey, we have research on this. Let's go see what's there. And here I am, 10 years later, working away on this. So, okay, so progressive muscle relaxation is a very, old thing, and it's really, I believe, quite misunderstood. But using PMR, progressive muscle relaxation or muscle training, can be very beneficial for your misophonia. Here's one person who said, I've been doing PMR every day for several weeks, I've been doing PMR every day in several ways for over 6 weeks. I'm doing a full 15-minute PMR audio session, a sequential relaxation routine, and instant relaxation technique. And it's working. I would say that my misophonia has gone down 70%. It's still there, but the pain and anger have diminished significantly. Lived with this almost my whole life, and this is the only thing that has ever really worked, if we should say, for him or her. Now, I'll talk more as we go on about why it works. One thing to note about misophonia is that misophonia is not a genetic developmental condition that just happens in late childhood, just like puberty. But it can actually start at any time. So here is the results of a study we ran. There was over 1,000 people in this study, online study, self-report. And here are the age of onset. Now, these are scaled so that this is a 2-year group, so 9.5 times 2 would be 19% of the group would fall into this. And this is, let's call it 1.1 times 5 years, so 5.5% would have developed it in the 19 to 23 age range. And so we have this very nice distribution where you do get a lot of people who have onset in this late childhood, early teen kind of time frame. But in this study, about over 15% developed it after the age of 18. So it can happen at any time. And from our research, it's a accidentally learned respondent behavior, reflex behavior. So this is the Mitchell-Dozier model, cognitive behavior model of misophonia that I talked about last week extensively. We have the anticipatory anxiety and avoidance, which is, staying away from situations, being nervous when you're in a situation where there is a trigger person. you have the trigger, and then there's a initial physical reflex. I'll talk more about this later. Then, while the trigger's going on, you have these intense emotions, the physiological distress, muscle tightening, heart going, racing, thoughts that are popping into your head, urges to do something, and then actually behavior that you do that feels like a reflex, but it's actually driven because your emotions are so intense. And then once the trigger stops, then you go into this coping responses after the trigger, and you get a rollover of the physiological distress and the kind of the chaos in your mind, and you think about things, you leave the room, you go get your headphones, whatever you do. And then there are environmental consequences that that feed back and shape these different behaviors. Okay, so that's the model. Now, when it comes to tense muscles in this model, the anticipatory anxiety and avoidance, lots of tense muscles with anxiety. You know, if you ever use the word, say, I'm tense, well, that's actually a description of your muscles. So you could say, I'm tense, or my muscles are tense. Either way. And so if you relax your muscles, it greatly helps with anxiety. So you can reduce your anxiety by relaxing. Okay, the next phase is the trigger and the initial physical reflex. Now, the trigger stimulus occurs 200 milliseconds later. You get muscles firing in the body. That's that initial physical reflex. And we can actually change this reflex by what we do with our muscles in a trigger situation. And we'll talk about that more later. But a little bit about what it's like. If you've ever been shocked with electricity, you feel it, but you don't feel it with your five senses. So it's not touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing. It's actually internal muscle fibers tightening. So when you experience a trigger, it may be a mild tasering you, or it may be a strong tasering. So here's my rubber band Misophonia imitator. And so if it's like trigger to slurping, it'd be like slurp, slurp, slurp. So you're actually being physically assaulted by your lizard brain, not by the sound, not by the person who's making it, but you're being physically assaulted by your little brain stem, and that's that triggers the intense emotion. So let me show you a video of my granddaughter, Katie, and hit the share button. So let's see, I can stop share, and then I can do share the screen with that, optimize for video, and I'm going to go ahead and share this. Okay, so now you should be seeing this, and you're going to hear two sniffs. So if you trigger to sniffing, you can plug your ears, you can go la 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 la, you can turn off your sound, but you're going to see her response to two sniffs. And I didn't hear that. Did anybody else not hear that? Okay, I don't know why I didn't hear that. I'm not sure if you heard that, but there was a sniff flinch. Almost immediately, there was a sniff and a flinch. And so I don't know what caused that for me to not hear it at all. Oh, I have my speaker turned down. Okay, so let me stop sharing that. But that's a strong zap to her lower leg. And if she was sitting at a table with her brother doing homeschool and her brother was sniffing, do you think this would annoy her, irritate, frustrate, even enrage? Absolutely. And it did. So let me stop sharing that. I'll go back to my other share here. Okay. I talk about the difference between the initial physical reflex and that triggers the emotions. I had a young lady, about 10 years old, and we were doing an experimental treatment very early where she was being very, very relaxed, and we were dealing with very tiny, I want to emphasize, tiny, minute triggers. And we had her laid out on a massage table. Mom was rubbing her back. And I asked her before we started, I said, what physical reaction do you have when you hear a trigger? She says, I don't have one. I just feel rage. I said, oh, wow. Okay. Good to know. And so she laid down, and I started playing the little sounds of her brother chewing, slowly bringing them up to where we could barely hear them, and they're barely short. And we could see the girl doing this every time she heard a sniff. And so afterwards I said, well, hey, did you feel anything while we were doing that? She goes, oh yeah, I felt that in my arms and in my legs. And we hadn't seen the legs, but she said, yeah, I felt that in my arms. I said, oh, what emotions did you have? She says, oh, none. You see, because the situation was different and that pulse was small and it didn't trigger the emotions. So now, if I haven't worked with you on this, and you listened last week, I'll tell you what I told you again. You probably say, but I don't have an initial physical reflex. And the reason that you feel that way is because the trigger starts, and about 200 milliseconds later, your muscle fires, and then maybe 50 or 100 milliseconds later, you're getting this emotional explosion. And the emotions overwhelm the experience that you have of being triggered. So you don't experience the initial physical reflex, but whenever I work with a new client, almost everyone agrees at the end of the first session that the model that I have for misophonia here is correct for them, because they identify, yes, I do have a tiny little reflex that I've never noticed. Now, Kate Morrison and I decided we wanted to try to get something formally published on this. And so we conducted this study where we had 26 participants. We had them hear tiny bits of trigger or see tiny bits of trigger. And then we said, well, what did you feel physically and what emotions did you have? And these arrows indicate locations where the people felt something. And just look at this variety. Some people felt it in their jaw or their neck or their shoulders or their upper arm or their hands and forearms or their chest or their stomach or their calves or their toes curled. But everybody had a physical response. They reported a physical sensation to weak, tiny triggers. I love the response when I would ask people, we'd play the little trigger, did that trigger you? Well, not really. I said, oh, well, did you feel anything? Yeah, I felt something up in my shoulders. He not really meant it wasn't what I normally experience as a response to a trigger, but there was something there. And so I love that response. Okay, now some of the people did not have muscle responses. So I want to make that very clear. There is a small percentage of people who we don't determine a response in, and a small percentage of people where it's not a skeletal muscle that's responding. Okay, now let's go into the emotions that are triggered by this reflex. These emotions have a lot of physiological distress. And when you're experiencing emotions, and by the way, this carries over into this phase, but when you're experiencing emotions, you have both the activity in the brain that's going on that's saying, I am furious, I am so mad, And we have the brain looks down into the body and says, hey, body, what's your vote? And the body goes, yeah, all my muscles are tense. I'm really angry. And it goes, okay, we're angry. Yes, we're angry. But if the brain says, I'm angry, body, what do you say? And it goes, hey, body, your muscles are all limp. You're not angry. And brain goes, but I'm angry. But the body goes, I'm not. My muscles are relaxed. So relaxing your muscles is like throwing a wet blanket on a fire. Now, the fire, it's still going to be a lot of heat there, but it brings it way down. And that's also true for this coping responses here, where your anger is boiling over and you feel like you have to do something about it. But if you can relax your body, we can shorten that recovery time significantly. And that can be very important. If we could take your recovery after a trigger from 5 minutes down to 1 minute, or from 1 minute down to 10 seconds, that's a major improvement. And this was the first benefit of muscle relaxation that was ever taught to me. Thank you, Scott, about how to use misophonia, because he had used it for decades to reduce and manage his anger at misophonia. Okay, so how do we develop the skill of relaxing a muscle? You see, usually we'll tense a muscle and then we'll ignore it. And we'll tense another muscle and then we'll ignore it and do something else. So usually we're tensing and ignoring muscles. Some muscles we work with a lot so that we get the ability to relax them on demand. So if you want to just try this, take your hand up like this, just kind of loosely, bring your fingers together like this. And then on command, when I say relax, just let them go. Ready, relax. It's effortless, right? You don't even have to think about it. You can just go, oh yeah, relax the hand. But if I said, okay, think of the muscles in the back of your neck and relax, or think of the muscles between your shoulder blades and relax, you wouldn't be able to do that. And I guess I've got the example here of your calves. Same thing. These are muscles that it takes training to develop the neurological ability to relax your muscles on demand. I worked with a man for his misophonia who was an Olympic level contender, kind of a cross-country racer. He said he actually thought his misophonia helped him a little bit in cross-country racing, because if he heard the person behind him breathing coming up on him, it kind of gave him a boost to go harder. But your calves are a big part of cross-country racing. He says, I've got Popeye calves, these like great big old calves. And I said something about relaxing them. He goes, oh yeah, I can relax my calves. Because I guess in part of the growing of those big muscles, it was important that you would be able to control them if they try to tense on you. So he had the ability, because he had worked on it, to relax his calves on demand. Now, your brain is full of neurons, right? Your brain is the most complex system in the world. There are more connections and opportunities and paths and such in your brain than, let's say, the entire internet all combined. So your brain is full of these neurons, and the neuron has a cell body. And off of that cell body, there's little things called dendrites. And they're little bumpy, spiny, with spiny connectors on it. Then you have the main axon, which is the nerve fiber, and it branches and splits off. And then the end of an axon, through something called a synapse, connects to the dendrite. Okay, and so I'm going to show you a video about how this works, but I want to emphasize that it's based on new information. Now, when you were a little kid, you were constantly giving your brain new information. Little complex tasks like squeezing a ball would be something that you go, there's a visual feedback to the brain of how the neurons are working. And that kind of a feedback to the brain allows the brain to go, okay, let's make some new connections so we can do it better. Now, talking about connections, one neuron in your brain would be typically connected to 1,000 other neurons. So 500 neurons tying in on this end, another 500 going off on this end. So there's an incredible number of pathways here. And in terms of getting your brain new information, let's do a new information task with your toes. So right now, think of your feet and toes and curl your toes upward. Just tense them up and feel the tension in your feet, and maybe you feel it up into your shins a little bit area, and notice how that feels, and then staying focused on those muscles, release and let them relax. And notice how different they feel now that they're relaxed compared to when they were tight and tense. And noticing the difference between tense and release is new information for your brain. So now I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to open up Synaptogenesis, which is a way cool video that I will share with you. And I will optimize this, and I'm going to check to make sure we have audio here. Okay, so here's the neuron cell body, the bumpy dendrites that are coming off, the big main axon for this nerve, which goes off to who knows where, and then these other neurons who've connected into this one.
Dendrites play an important role in communication by receiving and transmitting signals from other brain cells. Dendrites grow as cells adapt and respond to new information. Patterns vary between cells, but most dendrites grow 4 to 5 branches at a time. A growth cone at the tip of the dendrite expands when calcium is released and is trimmed back as the cell matures. Once spines have grown on the newly formed dendrite, axons from neighboring cells branch and synapse with the spines. Growth of dendrites occurs across the lifespan, but tends to decrease with age.
Okay, so we'll stop sharing that, and we'll go back to the other one. Oh no, now we have a question. The question is, how long does this take? Well, let me show you a time-lapse video here. And with this time-lapse video, let me get this to a starting spot. Okay, and now I can share it with you. Okay, so there's no sound. It's a silent movie here. This is brain material. So we have our neuron cell bodies here, 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 and here. We have dendrites coming off of the cell body. And then we have the longer axons connecting things, connecting things together. So here we go for 2 days, 48 hours worth, 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. 1 day, day and a half, 2 days. Isn't that amazing? Based on new information, your brain grows new neuron connections, and it just keeps going. And so the objective with progressive muscle relaxation is to develop new neuron pathways in your brain so that you will be able to relax your muscles on demand. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our presentation again. All right. So we've done the videos on how that grows. So a little bit about progressive muscle relaxation training. It was developed by Edmund Jacobson in the 1920s, primarily for anxiety. Originally, he tensed lots of muscle groups. Research has shown that you really get the same benefit by working 15 to 20 groups. This is just one way of obtaining deep relaxation. But depending on your misophonia, you may need to work specific muscles, and I'll show you how to do that. So the benefits of deep relaxation: decreased heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, muscle tension, your metabolic rate goes down, you don't do analytical thinking, you just kind of exist through this, experience it. And for some reason, there's an increase in skin resistance and alpha wave activity in the brain. Some of the benefits of daily deep relaxation would be things like reduced generalized anxiety, prevents accumulation of stress. You have increased energy, productivity, concentration, memory, less fatigue and insomnia. I have one person I worked with who had very significant insomnia problems and started doing intensive muscle training, and it really made a huge difference in her sleep, and able to go to sleep much quicker and using less medication to do so. Reduce disorders such as high blood pressure, migraines, headaches, asthma, ulcers, better self-confidence, reduce self-blame, increase awareness of your feelings if your muscles are relaxed. It helps to recognize your feelings. And you can achieve deep relaxation using yoga, guided meditation, mindfulness meditation, or progressive muscle relaxation. But muscle training, muscle relaxation training, has other benefits, okay? That the real misunderstanding globally, I find, about muscle relaxation training is that it's compared to be equivalent to yoga or meditation. For example, the government's PTSD app for our veterans has it just listed as, yeah, you could do, mindfulness training, or you could do a progressive muscle relaxation training. But the difference is that you do the mindfulness session and you get a single one-time benefit. You do the progressive muscle relaxation, you get that one-time benefit of deep relaxation, plus you're getting neuron growth to be able to relax your muscles on demand. And so with muscle training, you can reduce your misophonia anger because you'll have the ability to relax muscles after a trigger. And anger includes tense muscles, and I mentioned that before. So relaxed muscles, again, reduces your anger. You have the ability to relax your muscles before and through a trigger, and this is huge. Your lizard brain that has learned to zap you has a 2-second rule, and whatever it sees you doing in the first 2 seconds after a trigger is what it wants to do for you in the future. So if it's trigger 200 milliseconds, boom, it hits the muscle, and then the emotions start kicking in, and you kind of go, ah! And the lizard brain goes, oh, I predicted correctly, but maybe I needed to be a little harder next time. But if it's trigger, boom, relax, the lizard brain goes, oh, bad prediction, I'll start backing off. And it also can help in counterconditioning activities, either with something like the Misophonia Trigger Tamer app or just real-life counterconditioning, which I always take real-life counterconditioning as the first priority, and that is not torturing yourself, folks. That is not enduring prolonged misophonia distress. Okay, for a muscle training session, about 15 minutes, quiet location, regular times help, empty stomach, comfortable. I always recommend either lay down or be in a recliner. Again, you don't want tight clothing. You don't want to be worrying about things. You want to kind of have a passive, detached attitude. You want to experience it. And if you're thinking about anything else, you're doing it wrong. If you're thinking about oh my goodness, am I tightening my muscles fast enough, hard enough? Am I relaxing quick enough? Am I really noticing that? And if you're thinking about whether you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong because you're not thinking about how it feels to be tense and how it feels to be relaxed. Because noticing that difference between tension and relaxation is the key. Okay, so doing a session, do the things of the previous page, and then you want to tense for 7 to 10 seconds, tight but don't strain, concentrate on how the muscle feels, visualize the muscle, abruptly release, boom. Now you don't open it, you just let it go. And then relax it for 10 to 20 seconds, notice the limpness and the feeling of it, notice the difference between tense and relax, and then you repeat for the different muscle groups. And in the app that I set up, I'll talk about more in just a minute, just maybe you're right, the next slide even, is I start with the lower numbers here, 7 and 10, and then I ask you to do it multiple times. Okay, so here's the app, the Misophonia Muscle Relaxation app, and it's available on the Apple App Store or Google Play. And so here it is on the store. When you download it, it will come up with a choice of languages. Currently, there are 2, English and Portuguese. Hopefully, by the end of this month, it'll be English, Portuguese, Spanish, and German. And then this will, once you select a language and it downloads, or you click to move on and it downloads in the background, then you'll need to sign in. I find that signing in with Apple works great. I've been amazed at how hard it has been to get some of these login with Google and Facebook to work reliably every time. But it works well for some people. Use what you want to. And then it's going to ask you if you want basic or advanced. Basic is free. Advanced is $2 a month. I recommend everybody start with the basic because it will give you free advanced features for the first 7 days. So that way you can try out everything that's in the app, see if you like it, see if you need it. But I will say that if you define a user-defined special session and your advanced feature, free advanced features expire, you won't be able to do this until you get the advanced features. Okay, so muscle relaxation training, that's the main focus that you want to do. There's beginner sessions, there's expert sessions. Beginner sessions have more explanation as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. The expert sessions have less. 1 and 2 have a different muscle set. So what I typically recommend people to do is do a beginner 1 time, do a beginner 2 1 time, and then you can go and do just expert sessions after that. If you hit the edit button, it allows you to select the voice. There's 10 different voices options in the app. You can select different muscles. Let's go on and look at that. So here's the muscles. Many, many muscles, but by no way everything that you might need. But it has these extra buttons here. So like here in the chest, extra 1 and 2, it'll say, choose a muscle in your chest that you want to work on and tense it now. One of the things that I found in here, and some people, is that when they're triggered, their knee rises slightly. And that is actually a hip flexor muscle. I don't have a hip flexor muscle in here, but I do happen to have in the legs and feet, I believe I have quad lift. And if you do the quad lift, that will address hip flexor. Or if you know how to tense a hip flexor, you can just click an extra, 1, 2, and 3 and add it in that way. Okay, so you can select which muscles you want. You can shorten the session. You can create short sessions. For example, that instead of tightening different muscles in your arms, you can do all the right arm muscles, all the left arm muscles. And then you can do them yourself in groups, especially once you've been working the muscles quite a bit. Okay, so if you do a beginner session, you can select background music, background sounds to choose from, You can have the music play longer than the end of the session if you want to. You can adjust how long you're tense, how long you're relaxed, and how much talking is there. And for example, a beginner session, this is 16 and a half minutes. And then here is a kind of a faster talker, Mira faster, it says, it's 12 and a half minutes. And these will be a little bit different every time because it doesn't use the exact same script every time. Okay, sleep and muscle training. So a lot of people have trouble going to sleep because their mind is spinning and rolling and wondering. Doing PMR toward bedtime helps pull you down and let you be in a better condition to go to sleep. But you can also do muscle training in bed, lights off, eyes closed, and you can use a short beginning and a sleep ending, and that way you can just focus on your muscles, and that helps you not focus on the things that your mind wants to run on, and it enables you to go to sleep in many cases. Okay, now I'm talking about this initial physical reflex that we want to change, and I'm sure you're saying, but I don't have one. So here's how you find it. You want to relax completely and focus on your body, and then you want to have a tiny trigger, okay? Tiny. So for example, I'm not going to do a trigger, but I'm going to use an old-fashioned bell to ring, and that old-fashioned bell is in the Misophonia Reflex Finder app, and it's this purple head. It looks blue, but it's really purple. And unfortunately, it doesn't come up with all of these triggers in it. A lot of these triggers are shared by the trigger tamer. But if I hit the reflex test button, and then I'm going to go find the phone ring old, and I've got to make sure that I've got original sound on. Okay, original sound is on. Okay, good. So now this is 2%, and let's just bring it down to, a half second here. Okay, or I can make it louder. I can make it shorter, right? And so you can bring it down short and soft. And at that level, if that's a trigger, that won't trigger you. And so there's a transition between something that doesn't trigger you at all and a level that causes your normal misophonia experience. And so you want to focus on your body, hear a tiny trigger. For a long time, I used celery as a test device with my clients because I can take a little bitty small strip or even a wide piece in a corner. And if I bite the corner, it just goes, and that's all you get. And you can make it very small, and then you don't have to have anything dry in your mouth you can get rid of. So then you say, well, what sensation did you feel? And you may have to test it several times, but we're looking for this initial physical reflex. Now, if you have a chewing trigger, then your initial physical reflex, no matter where that chewing trigger occurs, will be the same. And if you have an auditory chewing trigger, then you have a very, very high chance, like almost certainly, that a visual chewing trigger will have the same initial physical reflex. But you may have a shoulder flinch for chewing, and for somebody sniffing, your toes may curl. So for different classes, types of triggers, you can have different reflexes. If you think back to that slide where I had all the arrows pointing on the lady, that experiment, 42% of the people had different initial physical responses for different triggers. Okay. So, how do you use what's the training that you need for the initial physical reflex work? Well, it's one of two things. Either you can do the full muscle training which is really a positive treatment for anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, lets you relax. But if you're a child or especially a younger teen, it's just too boring. It's too still. And so what I do is I work only the specific muscles that they have for their initial physical reflex. So if their reflexes for chewing was their shoulders, and for sniffing their toes curled under, then we would make a custom session that would have sniffing and toes curling under, and we would do 4 times of the shoulders up and 4 times of the toes curling under, with a short beginning and a short ending, and that's about 2 minutes worth of work there. Okay, ask them to do it, 2 to 4 times a day. I believe this 2 minutes is for only like one muscle. So if it was toes and muscles, it might be 4 minutes long. So here's another example that I use of the toes curling under. Curl your toes under, hold, release, hold, release, hold, release, and it's only 2 minutes long. Okay, just a little bit more about the muscle training app. There's a settings page for you, or options page, and one of the options is history. So it does keep a history of when you've done the sessions, and you can clear it if you want to. We don't currently do anything with the history. It's just there for you to see it. But you can see that this was a short session, 4 muscles. You did the whole session. Here's a long session with 31 muscles. They did the whole session for a little under 14 minutes. And here is a session that had 31 muscles, but only 5 were worked, and it was only 2.5 minutes. So you can see what was done in your history. So now you've done your muscle training, maybe 10 to 15 times. And then you can start doing sequential relaxation, which is like relax your right hand, relax your left hand, and you just step through all the muscles, relaxing each one. And then instant relaxation, or ragdoll, is just relax. And you can use the guided app for that. Once you've done that a little bit, you can do it without it. So my recommendation on day 1, do a beginner. There's a video on the information page. Watch the video. Do a beginner 1 session, a beginner 2 session. For the first week, do 4 sessions a day. This is an hour a day. This is a real commitment, but this is a level that kickstarts this very well. So first week, 4 a day. Second week, and these would be expert sessions. Second week, 3 expert sessions with a sequential relaxation before it, and at least 5 times the ragdoll, with or without the audio. For the third week, go to 2 sessions a day, and you can decide you may want to stay at 2 sessions a day for a while to really feel the benefit from this, or you may go to 1 a day. Okay, real life use of muscle relaxation training. You want to relax when you feel tense, when you're going into a possible trigger situation, you're feeling some anxiety, relax. You want to relax immediately after a trigger to recover quicker and to reduce the anger associated with it. You want to relax before and stay relaxed through the trigger. And if you do that, remember the lizard brain 2-second rule. If you're relaxed and it's trigger, relax. That's a lizard brain retraining event. If need to, you want to move away or block triggers to avoid prolonged misophonia distress. Prolonged misophonia distress makes misophonia worse. Okay, I've got it in here twice. And then relax whenever you feel anxious or tense or frustrated or angry. It's really good to help prevent new triggers. So my conclusion, there are many general benefits of progressive muscle relaxation, but when it comes to misophonia, there's 3 major benefits. That you have the benefit to have relaxed muscles, which is a general health and well-being, which reduces misophonia. You have the ability to relax muscles on demand. And then the third one is that it's a powerful treatment for misophonia. That you relax when you're tense, you relax when there might be a trigger, you relax after triggers, you relax before and through triggers to to reduce the immediate severity, that you can manage it better that way, and it reduces the future reflex. All right. So I'm ready for questions now. We have a few minutes. I can stay on later, but we have officially 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to pop open so thank you very much for attending, and I'm going to pop open my chat box. And let's see, I'm going to run back up. Pam may be bringing me something, but I'm going back to the top. Good evening. Copy that. Well, if you'll send me an email, I can do the slides. So the static is annoying in her voice. I apologize, Debbie. My cables, my connections, my good high quality speaker, my iPhone, my Android phone failed me. So I do apologize. I did turn down the background noise. I noticed that also, that it was too high. And there was a comment about her speech being too fast, and that would be your choice, because well, that was just her pace. Right now, you could also, part of what made the speech too fast was that I had a 7-minute tension time and a 10-minute relaxation. So if you 7 seconds. So if you went with a 10-second tension time and a 12 or 15-second relaxation time, you would find there would be a lot more silence in there. If you'll send me, Winston, if anybody who wants a copy of the slides, send me an email, because the slides were already made available to the Misophonia Association, and so I'm happy to do that. Okay, to send that to you. Okay. So I apologize for the static, guys. I really am sorry about that. It's a free app, so you can give it a try. No, the App Store app does not cost $39.99. Okay, that is not the yellow head. We're looking for a yellow head Misophonia muscle relaxation free app. Okay, if it asks you to pay for anything, it's not the yellow one there. I can't get the focus, but anyway, it's so that was Madeline. It's not the $39.99 is the Misophonia Trigger Tamer, which is a treatment app. Okay. Okay. So I appreciate the feedback. This is very good feedback about the pacing, and so I think I need to work on that. So any questions about using this to make, and you don't have to use this one, but let me tell you a quick story. I trained Nate Mitchell about misophonia. He's a psychologist. He's actually our treasurer of the Misophonia Institute, but he was a psychologist and a professor in Louisville, Kentucky. And he and I were at the psychologist conference talking about misophonia. And in August, I said, he talked about, I'm going to have to reduce my clinical workload because once school starts, I got all this professor stuff to do. And I said, so I guess you're not taking any new patients. He says, no, I'm not, except for misophonia patients, because they're easy. And I thought, oh my goodness, what are you doing that I'm not? Because I had trained him, and at that time I was usually doing initial training about misophonia and passing it on to sequent repatterning therapists. But what I discovered is that he was doing the muscle training more intensely than I was, where I would ask people to do 2 sessions a day and they might do 1. He was insisting on doing 4 sessions a day, an hour a day of muscle training and an hour a day of fun. And so he really was having far better results than I did. So I took training from him, and I've applied that into the work that I'm doing now with individuals. And I do work with individuals. So, okay, my 15-year-old daughter has misophonia. My question is the initial physical response of tensing so incredibly disturbing, uncomfortable to the body that makes the emotions so filled with hatred and rage? You know, I don't know that it's that strong, because in some people it's weak and they still have strong emotions, but we believe it triggers the emotions. And because it triggers the emotions, and the, you know, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Is fingernails on a chalkboard that horrible? No, but most of us don't like it. But if you got the fingernails on the chalkboard, typically that's a physical response. That the people who dislike fingernails on chalk are shivering. Ugh! And what they should be saying is, stop, I hate shivering. They don't. They say, stop, I hate that sound. And so if you would shiver something like that, and then you ask somebody to stop it, and they say, I'm not doing anything, and now you get all the emotion that's embroiled with trying to get it to stop and being annoyed or bothered or irritated by it, it's a stimulus. It can become a stimulus that triggers. So it's not like you're getting a strong, you know, pow, that a one-time thing is going to produce that amount of rage and anger. But we find that when that reflex comes down, that the emotions come down also. So it's a component that triggers. Think about it as triggering the emotional response, because we know from the work of Dr. Kumar that the things that are going on in the brain for the emotions are a learned emotional reflex response. Again, once it's triggered, then you have the full response. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. Thank you, Winston, for finding the right link to the app. Couple of appreciations. You're very, very welcome. If anybody has a question, we can field that now. You can even unmute your mic if you want to, but it looks like we don't have a lot of questions here. So I'm going to say, unless that question pops up while I'm saying thank you. Again, I appreciate your attendance here tonight. Misophonia has been something that I've been focusing on for a decade. My primary career is a behavioral parenting coach. So if you know somebody who has a 3-year-old that's hitting the baby, 10-year-old who won't go to school, that's my primary field. But misophonia takes up 90% of my time, and I really enjoy working on it. So, and I enjoy the people that I get to work with. So thank you very much, and I wish everyone well. So good night.
Recording stopped.